This is every single fight to make next after UFC Fight Night Abu Dhabi Sandhagen versus Nurmagomedov. I've got all of the key fighters from that card on the screen right now. Some winners, some losers, and you may notice there is an empty box next to all of them, and that's where their next opponent's going to go, who I have hidden around the perimeter of the screen. I'll slowly reveal those opponents one by one as the video goes on and place them where they belong on the screen. Let's start straight away with Umar Nurmagomedov. Now, you guys know I'm very unbiased when it comes to this, so I'm going to give this guy a real logical next opponent, okay? This is very, very logical. This is an extremely logical next opponent, okay? I hear a lot of people saying Umar Nurmagomedov should be next for the winner of O'Malley versus Merab. Guys. Since when did we give people title shots for getting one top 15 win? Listen, I don't want to be that guy, but Sandhagen got dominated by Aljo in round one and lost to Peter Yan. And dare I say, Yan looked more impressive against Sandhagen, and a more impressive looking Sandhagen than Umar did. And dare I say that Aljo, he did it in a round. What took Umar so long? I don't think he's quite ready for that top level yet, guys, but hear me out, all right? There's a guy who annoyingly has been signed to fight Mario Batista instead of Dominic Cruz because the UFC hates his existence. This legend of the sport is Jose Aldo. I really want this fight for many reasons, guys. First of all, hear me out. Aldo's a good underdog there. Wicked explosive takedown defense. Wicked power on the feet. Dangerous striking. If that fight is booked as a 3-rounder, hell, I might pick Aldo. 5-rounder, you have to sort of favor Umar, and Aldo's maybe not likely to get a finish. But in a 3-rounder, I don't expect Umar to be that big of a favorite in that fight. We saw Aldo stuff every single takedown off Merab. Nobody takes Aldo down. Maybe he's not the Aldo he was in the previous run he had at bantamweight, but still looked great against Jonathan Martinez, who is a dangerous up-and-comer who had beaten Saeed Nurmagomedov. Aldo destroyed him. I think this is a very interesting matchup, guys. So if Aldo does win in September against Mario Batista, listen, Aldo beat Marlon Vera. Aldo beat Rob Font. These are really, really credible wins, I think, right now in the bantamweight division. He beat Pedro Munoz. He has 4 ranked wins at bantamweight right now. And Vera was in the top 5 until he lost to Davison Figueiredo. So I feel like Aldo deserves more respect at bantamweight. Way more respect. And I think for Umar Nurmagomedov, listen, I just think I'd love this to be on the line if they do an Umar versus Aldo matchup. Khabib was yapping a whole bunch about how Aldo is making massive mistakes and he's only fighting for money and he doesn't fight for legacy because he stuck around longer than 2 title defenses like Khabib did. He didn't win the belt off Al Quinter, I don't care what anyone says. Either way, he won it off McGregor though. I'm not saying he wasn't a champ, but well, we counting as title defenses here, guys, you know? Either way, Umar Nurmagomedov, Jose Aldo, I think it'd be a massive matchup, and I think that's what's on the line. Khabib Nurmagomedov had a lot to say about Jose Aldo, and Aldo the same back to Khabib in response to what Khabib was saying about him. Khabib's been really, really disrespectful of Jose Aldo. So, if Khabib and his team want to see if they can put their money where their mouth is and keep that same energy, they say that Aldo is wasting his career by sticking around too long. He'll never be the top level again. Aldo doesn't seem to think so. I think Aldo can compete with the best right now, as long as it's a 3-rounder. Okay? I'd love to see Umar versus Jose Aldo to see if, you know, just to see how Khabib would react if Aldo were to so chance win the fight against him. But I really want to see this matchup. Forget all of the vendettas. Forget all of everything. You're telling me that isn't a sick matchup? Jose Aldo versus a Nurmagomedov. We may never... Aldo versus... The thing is about Umar is I couldn't care less about Umar. I care about Nurmagomedov, though. You know what I mean? I love that. That's so much better for the division than Corey Sandhagen. Sure, Sandhagen would have been a free win for Sean O'Malley, and it's an easier matchup, and stylistically, when you think about that matchup, you think, oh, that's going to be one for the ages. But with Umar around, you have a really fun-looking name on a poster now, which is Nurmagomedov. And we can have Aldo Nurmagomedov, O'Malley Nurmagomedov, and those matchups are going to come. I just don't think Umar's earned a title shot yet. Sorry. He was going to fight Aldo Sandhagen, his first ranked opponent. I think Barcelos might have been number 15 at one point during the build-up of their fight, maybe slipped down to number 16 or something, but he got ranked by beating Barcelos. But other than that, he has 1 ranked win over Sandhagen. I don't find that an impressive resume for a title shot. I don't know about you guys, but I really don't whatsoever think that's an impressive resume. So Aldo, perfect matchup. Winner takes on the winner of O'Malley versus Merab. We move on to another matchup in the bantamweight division. Corey Sandhagen. So we'll go through the whole of bantamweight right now with the first four. Corey Sandhagen versus Kyler Phillips. Kyler Phillips is a up-and-comer. He's got a fight coming up soon that I believe he's going to win. For the life of me, I can't remember who his fight is against. He might not even have a fight coming up soon, but I'm fairly certain he does, and I think he's going to win it. I just can't remember who it's against right now. I think it's Rob Font. It's Rob Font. He's fighting Rob Font coming up soon. If he wins that one, do him versus Corey Sandhagen. With Sandhagen, it's not like, oh, let's try and rebuild him. He's already past 30. It's a young man's division now at bantamweight. We've got a lot of 20-year-olds coming up, and late 20 years old is sort of like the average age of the current prospects rising in the bantamweight division, it feels like these days. And even there's some early 20-year-olds just outside the rankings, like some, I think Tabit's like 23, 22, and we keep seeing like Rosas Jr. or even Cameron Simon. These guys are really young in the bantamweight division. So I think Corey Sandhagen isn't a name that you have to rebuild. Like, oh, let's get Sandhagen back on track with a big name like Cruz, and then we'll rebuild him as a contender. Like, no. Sandhagen needs to face the chance of sacrifice. That's what you have to do with these types of contenders. He's been at the top for a while. He's not a superstar, but everyone knows him and loves him. I'm not saying that. But he's not a big superstar that's going to bring massive pay-per-view sales. So you have to kind of like offer him up to a contender. And if Kyler Phillips beats Rob Font, which I think he could and probably would because he's been looking sensational, that's a sick matchup on paper. Stylistically, Sandhagen-Phillips is going to be a striker's dream matchup. So I think that should be made as well. And Davison-Figueiredo, you may be thinking, oh, I'm going to say Davison should be next for O'Malley. And maybe you were annoyed by me matching up Umar with Aldo, knowing and thinking that I would give Davison Sean O'Malley or Merab. That's not what I'm going to do with Davison-Figueiredo. Of course, we need to see Davison-Figueiredo versus Piotr Jan. This is the matchup I wanted to see years ago. There was a time, if you guys remember it, not that long ago, when Davison-Figueiredo was the flyweight world champion, and he was on a dominant streak of, I think this was just after the Alex Perez fight, where he guillotined him, and before that, he just smoked Benavidez twice in brutal, brutal fashion, and Jan had dusted up Faber, and then he beat Aldo, and he became champion himself. So I really wanted to see Davison-Figueiredo versus Piotr Jan at that time, and I was thinking, okay, if Davison cleans through Brandon Moreno in the first fight that they had, I think he did November, then turned around 4 weeks later to fight Moreno. If he wins that and Jan beats Aljo, we're going to make that matchup. Things got in the way of that. Jan's knee and Davison's draw, I guess, with Moreno because of a bullshit 10-9 round that they gave Moreno in the 5th round of that fight. People don't know that. They gave Moreno round 5 of Figueiredo Moreno 1. Same way they gave Grasso a 10-8 in round 5 against Shevchenko in their second fight. They're building the Mexican PI. Either way, look at the sphere card. All good, though. They tried. Dumb bitches. Pantoja rules. Davison-Figueiredo, Peter Yan. Sick matchup. Make it happen in the bantamweight division. And we could realistically be looking at a bantamweight division by December, January region. We could be seeing all of these matchups. Umar, Aldo for a title shot. Because I think Aldo needs a fight to get him to a title shot if he wins against Batista. Because if he wins against Batista and they say, ooh, Kyler Phillips next, I'm not interested, man. Umar, Aldo, Sandhagen, Phillips, Figueiredo, Jan, Marlon Vera's the next one we need to match up, and he should be fighting Song Yudong. Song Yudong doesn't have a matchup. Recently lost to Peter Yan. He's below Marlon Vera in the rankings. Marlon Vera, I thought he won the first fight that they had against each other. They gave it to Song Yudong. There's some controversy there. Very, very close scrap that they had. I say run it back. It's been long enough. I think it's literally been about 5 or 6 years since they first fought each other, so maybe 5 years. God, time's going fast. But yeah, Marlon Vera, Song Yudong, make the matchup happen. I think it's a sick fight in the bantamweight division. And then the winner of that one can welcome up like if Montel Jackson gets another win, if, you know, Sandhagen doesn't take the Phillips fight. That's where you start looking at the winner of Vera Yudong to welcome that new guy who's standing out in the 10 to 15 range, you know? Vera, Song Yudong, 2. Sharaputdin Magomedov had an iffy performance, so he's going to need some time off. I was honestly thinking, let's do Shara Magomedov versus Bo Nickel. Let's do Shara Magomedov versus Joe Pyfer. I don't think they're actually going to be on the same schedule. I think Joe Pyfer and Bo Nickel are probably going to be on the November card in MSG. I think either Magomedov is going to rush, and if he does rush, he's not going to rush to be on the MSG card. He's going to rush to be on the Abu Dhabi card in October. So if he does rush, he won't be on a card that Bo Nick or Joe Pyfer are probably going to be used for. So I think Magomedov's probably going to fight in Abu Dhabi in October, or sometime in December onwards if he has a little bit of time off. I'd love to see him fight someone. I think it'd just be a really interesting test for him. Either way, sick matchup. Gregory gon' kill him. Master Uguay, he's ready, okay? He senses Tai Lung is escaping prison here. Master Uguay is very ready. We just need to let him loose on Magomedov. And this man turtle fucking Obama on HGH monster will destroy. I don't know. It'll be a sick matchup. I don't actually know if he'll destroy because honestly, he's kind of chinny. And listen, if Magomedov's going to get a KO on anyone, it might be Gregory Rodriguez if he catches him with one of those kicks out of nowhere. So I think it's actually a very compelling matchup. I don't think Shara's earned a ranked opponent. No offense. Your last opponent fought you on a week's notice. And he's a loser in the UFC, let's face it. I mean, his best win is maybe Cody Brandage, which is Bo Nickal's best win, I guess, as well. Either way, he's 6-0. He's been doing it for 2 years. Different standards. Shara's been doing it for 10 years. He's 14-0. 17-0 if you include modified rules with no elbows. Okay? He's had more time in the game. Gregory Rodriguez. I think this is a huge matchup. You could do it in Abu Dhabi. You could do it at the end of the year. You could do it whenever. Make it happen. Winner gets a ranked opponent. I just don't think... I think I need to see Shara versus a legit unranked guy first. Oleksiejczuk was on a week's notice. Tricoli was on a week's notice. And other than that, he fought Bruno Silva and had a pretty iffy performance against him as well. So, listen, Bruno Silva's a good win, but not as good of a win as it was when he was on a 4-fight UFC win streak when Pereira fought him. So I think Shara Magomedov versus Gregory Rodriguez. Winner gets a ranked opponent, or even winner gets ranked at number 15. I just couldn't really find anyone free in the rankings, and I didn't want to give him like a number 8 in the world guy. We move on. Tony Ferguson versus... God, there was many jokes I wanted to make here, but I'm going to try and be serious. This is the only option for Tony Ferguson, and this is the only way that I'll ever accept seeing him in the UFC cage ever again. I want Tony Ferguson to retire. I was going to put up like a sign for an old people's home or something in the other box, but... this is the only matchup that makes any fucking sense, and I won't take no for an answer. Trevor Peek. Trevor Peek is fighting Yanal Ashmuz soon. If he wins that one, I think you do him versus Tony Ferguson. And I'll tell you this as well. If he loses that fight to Yanal Ashmuz, which he might do, by the way, which he really might do. Yanal Ashmuz is a dangerous guy. Tony Ferguson versus Trevor Peek still makes sense. If they're going to give Tony Ferguson anyone in the UFC, listen, I'm hearing Jim Miller. I'm hearing Clay Guida. I'm hearing this matchup, that matchup. I still think he loses to those guys. And they'll wrestle him. They will wrestle him. And they'll take him down and just lay on him because he's weak and frail and he's an old bitch. I'm sorry, Tony, but it's true. It's not a skill thing. It's not a rusty thing. It's not, oh, the game's out. You're just weak now, man. And it's so obvious to anyone who's watching closely enough. You're weak compared to everyone else you're fighting. Soft muscles, getting chucked around, no athleticism anymore. Old man. Trevor Peek is the type of fighter that will give Ferguson a legit chance to win in a Ferguson way. He will scrap on the feet with Ferguson. He will look for the KO with punches only. He will be throwing standing hammer fists and spinning back fists, and Ferguson will be spinning elbowing him. And even if it is a brutal KO for Trevor Peek, you get a big star in him, and you actually get some value out of someone beating Tony, not Chiesa, who just gets to yap bullshit on an analyst desk for the next 6 months now that he's finally got a win again. We'll see him in 2 fucking years. Either way, Tony Ferguson, Trevor Peek is the matchup, and Tony could win it. Like, I don't think he would, but it'd be fun. Either way, I think you do that matchup. If they're going to do anything, I want him to be cut from the UFC. I might do a breakdown of his interview, because it was one of the saddest things I've ever watched. Ferguson versus Peek is the matchup to make, I think. I'm being serious. I'm not memeing here. Tell me who else. Chase Hooper destroys him. Ah! What happened, Tony? What happened, Tony? This guy could beat Habib. to Chase Hooper destroys him in 3 years. It's so sad, man. Tony Ferguson, Trevor Peake, let's move on. Mackenzie Dern. Mackenzie Man Shoulders McDern. Mackenzie Dern versus Virna Jandiroba. Now, the reason I say this is Virna Jandiroba just got a big win against Amanda Lemos. Even though no one was really watching that card, she was introduced to a lot of MMA fans that maybe weren't aware of her or had forgotten about her, and she sort of reintroduced her presence into the division. Mackenzie Dern just arguably won against Lupita Godinez. Dern has a win over Virna Jandiroba, and she has a really good style to beat Virna Jandiroba. So I think you should do this. Give Tatiana Suarez the title shot against Zhang Weili. Do Yan Xiaonan versus, I think she's actually fighting someone. I don't know who, but do Dern versus Virna Jandiroba. I think this is the matchup to make. Dern's beat her before. It gives her a good excuse to make Virna Jandiroba fight someone down the rankings and gives Dern an excuse to get up the rankings. So I think that should be done. Joel Alvarez, great win over Elves Brenner, Spaniard himself. There's two annoying fucking frail striker weight bullies in this division, and I want them to fight each other. It's Joel Alvarez versus Jalen Turner. Make it happen. I just want to see the freak show that would be that fight. Do it in Abu Dhabi in October. I know Jalen Turner's been looking for a matchup. I know Joel Alvarez just called out Bobby Green for a fight in Abu Dhabi in October. So, you know, he's clearly got Dober fever. He just called out Bobby Green, okay? So let's do Joel Alvarez versus Jalen Turner. Appease him. Give the matchup. I could see Jalen Turner beating him as well. Like, I think that's a really dangerous matchup for both of them. So make the fight on October in Abu Dhabi. And then you'll have Ilia Topuria, who's like the Spanish adopted star right now. I say that because he's not... I don't want to have to always go into this, but there's a reason for why I'm saying it. Ilia Topuria is... He's not Spanish. He's Spanish because he moved there when he was a teenager and he now represents them and he speaks it. He's a Spanish speaker. But what you want to have is all of the Spanish population watching for Ilia Topuria, and then they're like, oh, Joel Alvarez, that's one of us. You know what I mean? Let's support him. So you got to sneak him on the card. Somewhere on the prelims, probably the headliner of the prelims or second on it, Joel Alvarez, Jalen Turner should be added to that card that has Ilia Topuria on it. That I'm going to make a video about in a second as well. Azamat Murzakanov got a big win over Alonzo Menifield. I think it's a great fight. It was a great fight. I think it was a great performance. The guy hasn't fought in a long time, so I think we need to keep him active. I'm not saying October in Abu Dhabi. I think that might be a bit too soon for him. He did slug it out with Menifield quite a bit, so let's say December, January, no more than 5 months. I'm looking at a 4-month turnaround here for him. Let's do him versus Volkan Ozdemir in the light heavyweight division. I think that makes all the sense in the world. There you go. That's all the matchups I want to make. And also, I'll get back to this. Umar versus Aldo. You're telling me that that doesn't add a lot of value to any pay-per-view you put it on. Nurmagomedov versus Aldo on a poster with a guy that basically is looking like another version of Habib. And Jose Aldo's on the other side of him. And he's picked up another win over Mario Batista. I'm telling you, if he beats Mario Batista, I fucking hope they do Umar versus Aldo. Because I don't think Umar has earned a title shot. And one thing I don't want to happen is, listen, Merab has earned it. And that's why Merab versus O'Malley's happening. Let's say O'Malley gets past Merab. He's going to have a defense against Umar, who, if Umar loses to O'Malley, one more loss and all of a sudden he's nothing in the sport. I want some kind of resume that's going to hold up if a champion beats the contender. Do you know what I mean? This is not just because I hate Umar. I just think, like, sometimes when you look at a contender and you think, oh, this guy's dangerous, and then they lose to the champion, and you think, well, he only really beat that guy, and now we're thinking about it. And if he loses again, he's kind of mid. That's what happens. I want a legitimate contender. And if he picks up an Aldo win after Aldo shows he's still got it again against Mario Batista, that's sick. That's a huge matchup. This would be a super fight. And the UFC has no idea that it would be a super fight. But I bet you the interactions on posts about this fight would go crazy. In the meantime, do Figueiredo versus Yan. Maybe delay that a bit later than you would do Umar versus Aldo. And then you could sort of time it up perfectly to where everything works out. So maybe early next year you do this. December, you can try and squeeze in this. Maybe January. Maybe O'Malley comes back in April. Who knows? If O'Malley beats Merab. Jesus Christ. But I want to see Aldo in the mix again. See you later. Goodbye.